Well, hello there, friends! Welcome to the fire. Ooh, boy, do I have a story here that will have you cringing to your toes. Your character should be interested in my character, not his. r/RPG horror stories posted by no_cloud_7275. This story happened 2 years back. I was invited alongside a few other people on a West Marches server into playing in another resident of that server's homebrew campaign that he was putting together. I eagerly accepted and began playing with other people from that server whom I had at least some experience playing with before on the original West Marches server. Everyone made relatively well-adjusted characters, but the problem player of the story was Edge. Edge was your typical dark brooding tiefling rogue with a tragic backstory that he would constantly refer to but never talk about when asked about it, which wouldn't be so bad if he didn't oh so obnoxiously bring it up every session. It was honestly the sort of Edgelord character that you would hear about but never think that you would actually encounter. The other important character in this story is the other tiefling of the party, a bubbly tiefling bard. She too, like Edge, had a dark backstory where her character had faced ostracization and bullying by her noble father but had overcome it and chose to see the good in life rather than letting the bad that she had faced sour her. For my own part, I was playing an optimistic human fighter who had cared deeply for his comrades and always sought to do the right thing where he could. Both she and I had great rapport in and out of character, and our characters bounced off one another really well. The campaign goes smoothly, a bit with Edge still being obnoxiously edgy all the time. And at one point, we encounter Bard's noble father, who's hosting a tournament. After bullying Bard and making several remarks pertaining to her infernal heritage, my character decides to enter the tournament to beat her father, managing to unhorse him during a joust and humiliate him at his own tournament. Following this, Bard messages me, saying that her character really admired how my fighter stood up for her, that no one had ever really done that for her character, and asked me if I feel comfortable with our characters entering into a relationship. Now, I'm usually not a fan of romance in games that I run or play in, as it can be quite awkward and uncomfortable. This was the one exception, however, as the romance my fighter had with Bard felt very organic and not awkward at all, which was further helped by the good rapport that she and I already had with one another out of character. Following this, Edge's behavior begins to get worse, and he becomes noticeably more terse in-game, going off on his own constantly, saying that his character needs to be alone, and then getting upset that no one would follow him to see what was up, which, again, he brought on himself by knocking us back all the other times we'd done so. Additionally, in combat, his character would stick close to Bard, instead of trying to solo monsters to protect her, which only made these fights harder because she was far from the front lines anyway, and he wasn't doing as much damage as before. After a few weeks of this, Edge invites Bard and myself to join him in a secret voice chat. We do so, and the first thing that comes out of his mouth is that he called this meeting to talk about our characters' awful and out-of-character behavior. We were both confused about what he meant by this, and he dances around the subject for a bit before outright stating to Bard, "Your character should be dating mine, not his." According to Edge, since both he and Bard were playing tieflings and they both had dark pasts, that it would make sense that they would both be interested in one another, and that Bard and myself had clearly missed all the setups that he's been putting down. I have literally no idea what the F he was talking about unless he thought brooding and going off on his own all the time to be alone was a substitute for flirting. He then finishes by saying that he's
willing to give you both a second chance,
and that this was a role-playing game and we ought to be role-playing our characters correctly. I had to mute myself at this point as I was laughing my ass off at the sheer audacity, self-entitlement, and thirstiness of Edge, while Bard told him that her character was romantically interested in my fighter because he was a good-natured guy who stuck by his friends through thick or thin and didn't let bad things get him down, while Edge was miserable all the time and was always feeling sorry for himself. Of course she wanted to date the character who actually made her happy to be around. Finally, she finishes off by saying that neither of us owed him an explanation at all and that we could roleplay our characters however we wanted, and that if he didn't like it, then he could leave whenever he liked. We both left the call and told the DM what happened, while Edge posted a message on the server saying how hurt and sad he was and that we
couldn't be adults about this,
and
clearly weren't taking the game seriously,
and left the server. This would have been the end of it until Bart and I got booted from the original West Marches server by the mods for bringing drama to the group. We later learned that Edge has spun things so it sounded as though we have flaunted our in-character romance and bullied him out of the group when he left of his own volition. So, after complaining to one of the mods about this, who was his friend, we were booted from the group. There is something of a happy ending though. After finding out what had happened, our DM and the rest of the party left the West Marches server. But not until after the DM set the record straight to the entire server and explained just how shitty Edge had been and what had really happened. The resulting fallout had the mod that kicked us and Edge kicked from the server and a bunch of other people leaving as well, rendering the server a shell of its former self. Not sure if it's still up. As for the Bard and my fighter, they eventually got married and raised a family together in a nice, happy household and life. TLDR, Edgelord gets jealous of in-game relationship and demands we break it up for proper role-playing. Oh jeez, what a cringe fest! Courtesy of Edgelord. I mean, of course it makes perfect sense that the Bard would gravitate towards the emo loner that's antisocial, shows no interest in others, and goes off on his own to brood all the time, instead of the fighter who actually participated in Bard's storyline and had genuine chemistry with. Oh, by the way, that was sarcasm. See, what Bard did here was the right way to go about things. Always contact the other person first to get their consent for romantic roleplay. It's a two-way street. Both parties need to agree. Don't be like Edgelord, who just automatically assumed and then threw a tantrum because he didn't get his way. It's just really sad. Also, good on the DM and the rest of the group for having Bard and fighters back during this entire debacle. I just feel bad for the people on that West March server that had nothing to do with any of that drama and having their entire community just burned down through the selfish actions of Edgelord. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you want to see more content like this. And would you kindly follow the socials posted in the description below. As always, be good, be great, be awesome.